Well, hello, friends. Welcome to Investment Immigration Conversations. I'm your host, principal and founder of Carolyn Lee PLLC, Carolyn Lee herself. And I'm welcoming you to another investment immigration conversation today, where we'll be talking about EB-5 fundraising from the perspective of immigration. So this is not going to be about the other important aspects like marketing, promotions. This will just focus on the immigration aspects. And I intend to roll out a series of talks, conversations about the 956F, the project-specific filing under the EB-5 Reform and Integrity Act. So I'll be looking for some feedback from you all on how you liked the content of this webcast today and some suggestions for topics that you would like us to cover in the future. So I'm going to start with a little screen share, if I may. So let me start with the disclaimer. The presentation is informational only. No part of this presentation is legal advice, which would be specifically tailored to the particular client. No attorney-client relationship is created without a signed engagement between our firm and the client. The content may be promotional and so should be deemed attorney advertising. And any timeframes and estimates vary widely. And the content is copyrighted. So what are we going to talk about today? At a very high level, this is just sort of, fundamentals and introduction. So about our firm, background, the backdrop to our conversation today about the Form I-956F. Exemplars, the pre-RIA version of the 956F form. The I-956F Post RIA, the important role of the regional center in the I-956F form filing. And then we're going to talk about the elements of the form itself. And then we're going to zoom in for a little bit on the project aspect of the 956F form. And then we'll open it up for a brief Q&A. Okay. So this would be the promotional part about Carolyn Lee PLLC. So I have served 18 years in this space in various EB-5 bar and industry leadership roles. I've served 6 terms as American Immigration Lawyers Association National EB-5 Committee's chair, vice chair, co-chair, where we've done really amazing things in EB-5 advocacy, including commenting, providing technical comments on prior iterations and bills relating to the EB-5 program, culminating in the passage of the EB-5 Reform and Integrity Act of 2022. And speaking of the RIA, I serve as legislative counsel to Invest in USA, IIUSA, which is the EB-5 trade association. And very proud to have been part of the team that led eventually to the passage of the RIA, working intensely between 2021 and 2022. I am currently the co-chair of IIUSA's Public Policy Committee, where we continue the advocacy work. We're sort of the watchdogs of the industry in that sense, on the lookout for new policies and interpretations of the RIA. On the representation side, I've represented U.S. project clients, raising over $2.5 billion, well over 2.5 at this point in EB-5 capital to date. And on the investor side, represented, managed, handled thousands of investor cases from the tender start to the glorious finish of 829 approvals. And continuing on with a bit of promotional part, I don't usually do this in our talks, but I thought, you know what, I want to give a little bit of a sense of the larger team here at CLP as well. So we have 8 dedicated team members. We only do investment immigration, so that's our focus. 7 of us have advanced degrees, including JDs, masters, and PhD. Perfection is the standard. And I like to say, we don't really recruit for specifics, really, other than for fit and talent. And I think the fact that we have such incredible people kind of speaks to the culture and what we're looking for in the team, and we're recruiting. In terms of technology, I love that occasionally I get the question, are you a law firm or are you a tech firm? And that makes me think we're doing something really, really right, because we're truly a combination in that tech is a huge part of our operations and our practice. CFlow leads the way. It's our proprietary case management platform. It has an online component as well as a very active internal in-house component where we produce our cases and communicate with our clients. Communication is the key. Our clients are international and national, and so the technologies and our processes that enhance and facilitate our conversations with our clients, very important. We're focused on that. And innovation, really, it's about optimizing the tools that we have and being on the lookout for tools that we would want to acquire or develop. So that's very much a part of the DNA of our firm, is integrating tech into our practice. Now, let's talk about the topic for today. I think the background is important. I'm not going to assume any level of knowledge about what we're talking about today. The project aspect, the Form 956F, that is really the launch point to EB-5 fundraising. So we're talking about where we are in the law, and the law that's germane to what we're talking about is the Immigration and Nationality Act, in particular, Section 203B5, hence EB-5. And the EB-5 preference category was first created by Congress in 1990. We're also talking importantly about the Regional Center Program. This is sort of the subsection of the EB-5 law that pertains to us in pooled investment fundraising context. So the Regional Center Program was created in 1992 when Congress realized, you know what, we created this thing and it is underutilized. It is not optimized. So is there a way that we can fan the flames to get more usage of EB-5? And hence the Regional Center Program was created in 1992 as a pilot program. And it remains so today in that it is not yet a permanent part of the Immigration and Nationality Act. It has to be renewed. And the current iteration of the Regional Center Program, created by the EB-5 Reform and Integrity Act of 2022, or the RIA, will sunset in 2027. The regulating agency for our program is the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, or USCIS, and within USCIS in particular, the Immigrant Investor Program Office, affectionately called IPO. So these are our regulators. More by way of background, vocabulary. Immigration is all about vocabulary, and we've got lots of acronyms. So let's just cover some really important fundamental vocab here. The Regional Center is the entity holding USCIS designation, primarily for the purpose of promoting economic growth within a defined geography, designed to pool investment from numbers of different EB-5 investors, foreign investors. The new commercial enterprise is also a very important concept. Or we call it the NCE as well. It's any for-profit entity created to receive EB-5 investor capital, the new commercial enterprise, or NCE. It's also the issuer of the securities. Job creating entity, or JCE, is the entity that's most closely responsible for job creation. Doesn't have to be separate from the NCE. It could be the NCE, but often in EB-5 regional center program structures, it is a separate entity, and it could be multiple entities as well. Affiliated JCE is a newly defined concept under the RIA, and it is about the JCE that is under common ownership or control with either the regional center or the NCE. And these concepts will come up in the course of our talk. So, project. Pre-RIA, the project was documented sometimes in the precursor to the I-956F, which was the I-924. However, the 924 was optional. The I-924 that was submitted by regional centers contained documentation about an actual project, a real live project, as opposed to a hypothetical project that may be described in connection with a regional center designation application or proposal. So it was specific, it was real, it was live. And it was accompanied by a comprehensive business plan, critical, that met the matter of hoe requirements. Matter of hoe is one of the 4 key precedent administrative decisions governing the EB-5 program. And matter of hoe is known for its articulation of the business plan content standards. So it had to have matter of hoe specificity with an exemplar I-526 form. The I-526 form is the form that is filed by investors, or was filed by investors pre-RIA. And so the form would be completed with the project information pre-filled. So this was a regional center filing. And in the alternative, because this was not mandatory, the project documents would be presented with EB-5 investor filings. So the 526 investor filings would be comprised of the investor identity information, the lawful source of funds, and what we affectionately call Part 2 or Part B, the full project deck, the full project set of documents that represent project eligibility. And the project documents were filed with each and every 526 petition, even though they were same across the board. So now we have the I-956F. F relates to the sub-paragraph in the RIA where this filing and the requirements are described, 203B5F. It's mandatory now, so that's different. Every project fundraising has to file the I-956F. And the F has 6 statutory elements, including our almost all-important comprehensive business plan, economic analysis, investment and offering documents, your private placement memoranda, subscription documents, the partnership agreement or the operating agreement, depending on the form of the NCE. Policies and procedures, which are new, it's a new requirement under the RIA, that ensure compliance with securities laws, and a certification of compliance signed by both the regional center filer and the issuer of these securities, which is the NCE. So this is still a regional center filing, but it's also an issuer filing in the sense that the issuer or the NCE is making a separate certification that it is in compliance with all the securities laws. So that's a very important part of the RIA, is this emphasis on compliance with securities laws and indeed all applicable laws. Unlike the pre-RIA context where the project documents were presented with each and every 526 form, now the 956F or the project set is brought into, is referred to the investor petition by reference on the 526E. That's the new RIA form that investors file. So on a part within the 526E, are the data points relevant to the 956F filing, the NCE, NCE ID, and the 956F information. Now, the 956F information may not be forthcoming very timely, which ordinarily might delay fundraising because proof of the 956F filing is required before a 526E investor petition can be filed. But thanks to the Bering settlement, this is the result of litigation brought by Bering Regional Center, challenging USCIS's interpretation of the RIA, which I won't get into on this particular talk. Even if the formal receipt is delayed, the 526E investor filings can be filed with proof of the 956F filing in the form of a lockbox receipt that is issued in advance of a formal receipt, or proof of filing by cashed check that is associated with the 956F filing. I want to just zoom in a little bit on the regional center role because we get a lot of inquiries from fantastic projects that are not themselves also regional centers or affiliated with regional centers yet. And so the regional center due diligence aspect of what they want to do by way of raising funds, raising EB-5 capital for their project is important. So the regional center is the entity that's primarily regulated by the RIA, by USCIS. And affiliation with a designated regional center is required for that 956F or that EB-5 project. The affiliation could be, the regional center itself could sponsor its own projects and forge an affiliation with the NCE that way, or the regional center may be at arm's length, in which case that affiliation, that connection is typically forged by an agreement, by a regional center services agreement. Under those services agreement, the regional center will typically take on the obligations to maintain itself, its designation, and to comply with all aspects of the RIA. And there's a whole thick regime of compliance obligations under the RIA. One of the key aspects of the RIA is bringing in these oversights and administration requirements to regional center operations. So the regional center is taking all that on, specifically, in particular, filing a 956 to seek designation under the RIA, filing a 956G form annually as required for all regional centers, keeping their designations under the RIA, and filing the annual integrity form. I should asterisk a little bit here the filing of the 956. Following the litigation, the Bering litigation, regional centers were not required right on the spot to seek redesignation by filing the 956. One of the results of that settlement was previously designated regional centers would continue to maintain their designations, but had to file the 956 by a certain deadline, which the USCIS has extended. So right now, as of this moment, in May 2024, even if a regional center has not yet filed a 956, they may still be designated under the prior law. However, this is a complex area that needs to be carefully looked at in the course of regional center due diligence, because there have been other developments on top of this, like the requirement to file the annual 956G with some open questions still remaining, and the very clear requirement to pay the annual Integrity Act, without which the regional center would be terminated. So, and these terminations are starting to come in, the voluntary terminations, if you will. So the regional center due diligence for projects seeking the diligence, the affiliation with an arm's length regional center, this needs to be carefully navigated. Okay. Let's get to the form itself, the 956F, the elements. I think the elements kind of give you a sense of what we need to include with this application, the 956F application. And the forms really are quite instructive. You know, if you go down if you analyze the form and understand, okay, so I've got to produce these data points, you will have a very good sense of what the content of the filing ought to be. So parts 1 and 2 relate to the regional center. Part 3 relates to the NCE, the new commercial enterprise. Part 4 relates to the job creating entity. Part 5 relates to the project. Part 6 relates to the investment, the offering, the required disclosures. Part 7 relates to the policies and procedures, description of the policies and procedures. Part 8, required certifications by the regional center and the issuer. Part 9, series of questions about all persons involved with the NCE and the affiliated JCE, if the JCE is an affiliated JCE. This relates to the bona fides requirements under the RIA. Regional center program participants have to meet requirements, new requirements under the RIA to be persons that are generally not inadmissible, have not had criminal records relating to any fraud, misrepresentations, and they have to be, if they're regional center operators, US citizens or green card holders. Part 10 relates to fund administration. Part 11, authorized individual is signing again with respect to the representations in the form. Parts 12 and 13 relate to interpreter and the preparer. So I haven't really highlighted those parts here. Let's zoom in a little bit on the project part, okay? Part 5 of the form. The first part of part 5 is going to be about, well, is this a TEA project, targeted employment area, and under what basis? Are you claiming to be a rural area project? Are you claiming to be a high unemployment area project? And you're going to tick the relevant boxes here. In some instances, a project may qualify under both, in which case you tick both. And you're going to see with these sub-questions, these relate to the definition of rural. It has to be outside an MSA and outside a town having a population of 20,000 or more. Okay. If it's high unemployment, you've got to give the census tracts of any directly adjacent areas, census tracts that are directly adjacent to where the NCE or the JCE is principally doing business. The next part of part 5 relates to again, we're continuing with the TEA designation, getting more technical about the high unemployment data. So this part relates specifically to high unemployment area TEA designation. So, you know, what's the average for average unemployment rate for the area that you're seeking as the relevant area? What is the national average here? And what's the data source? And these numbers will be different depending on the data source used. So if it's ACS, American Community Survey data, that may produce one set of numbers. If you're using census disaggregation methodology, it may have different numbers. So the data source and methodology is very important. And this is, you know, we don't get into that as immigration counsel, but this is very important work of an economist who is going to be a part of the team putting the 956F elements together. Infrastructure is a new category under the RIA, qualifying for the lower investment threshold of 800,000. And so if it's an infrastructure project, it's going to tick this box and confirm that it meets the definition of infrastructure. If it's a high unemployment area, then you would tick that box. And if it's a non-TEA or infrastructure, meaning it's a project that is at the 1.05 million level, this is where the box would be ticked. One of these boxes must be ticked. Now we get into the capital and the project, the job creation aspects of the project. We're still in part 5 talking about the project. So we're going to talk about the number of EB-5 investors expected. Typically, that would be the maximum number of EB-5 investors. The aggregate amount of EB-5 capital. So within the entire capital stack, what is the anticipated EB-5 participation? That's the number that goes in there. Nature of the activity of the project. This is just general. In general, what kind of a project is it? And here is where we get more specific. Number 10, the included industries by NAICS code. So by NAICS code, and the NAICS codes would also be displayed down here in terms of the portion of job creation associated with each of those activities or inputs by NAICS code. Total number of jobs would be placed right in here. And again, down there. Oops, can't quite see it, but it's down there, the last field. So these are the elements in the form, and they're pulling from the underlying exhibits, right? Like the comprehensive business plan, like the economic impact analysis, like the investment and offering documents. So in our next conversation about the 956F and preparing to fundraise, EB-5 fundraise, I'm going to talk about the contents of the 956F. Questions at this point? Take a few minutes for those. Okay. Note that we have a new Form 956F that folks have to start using effective June 3rd. So make sure that you're going to the USCIS website and using the most recent form. You can start using it now. You can use it now, but starting June 3rd, only the new form will be accepted. Also, we should mention that there's been a recent filing fee increase effective April 1. So filings had to be postmarked by then, so it wasn't have to be received by then. And there's been a significant increase in filing fees. So also take note of that, and that is also going to be on the USCIS website. So we have a practice here of regularly checking the USCIS website to make sure that there have been no updates that have been missed. If you're on the mailing list with USCIS, which I encourage everybody to do, to subscribe to USCIS mail, these notifications will come into your inbox, but also checking the website for the form related information, the fee, the form addition, where to file, very important. All right, folks. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact us about this webcast. And again, would be interested in hearing from folks about what topics you'd like to hear covered. And next time we'll be talking about the contents of the 956F, the exhibits. Stay tuned. Be well.